Yesterday in social studies, we had started to read from our Democracy Studies Weekly newspaper. Does everybody have this back out?
Yes.
I think most of us left it opened up to this middle section, because this is where we left off. We were still reading about the Olympics. Or no, we had just finished that up, hadn't we? Okay, so I found a little bit of information that goes along with what we had read yesterday about the Olympics. Who remembers where they originally started? Who can help her out? What'd you say? Greece. They started in Greece. Now, have they always been going? Or was there a time where they didn't have them?
A time where they didn't have them.
Right. And then they started them back up, right? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna watch a very short, I think it's like 3 minutes or something, a short video that goes over what we read yesterday, and it might give a few more details that weren't included in what we read. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about what was the same from what we read yesterday to what we listened to today, and then see if you can decide what's different about them, okay?
Thousands of years in the making, what began as part of a religious festival honoring the Greek god Zeus in the rural Greek town of Olympia has today become the greatest show of sporting excellence on Earth. The inception date in 776 BC became the basis for the Greeks' earliest calendar, where time was marked in 4-year increments called Olympiads. What could it be? Why, it's the Olympic Games, of course. Competition fosters excellence, or so thought the ancient Greeks. In addition to sporting events, contests were held for music, singing, and poetry. You can read about them all yourself in classical literary works like Homer's Iliad and Virgil's Aeneid. Even mythical heroes appreciate a good contest every now and then, wouldn't you say? For the first 13 games, the ancient Greek Olympics featured just one event, the 200-yard dash. But over time, new exciting contests like boxing, chariot and mule racing, and even a foot race where the competitors wore a full suit of armor enticed many hopeful champions into the Olympic Stadium. The combined running, jumping, wrestling, javelin throwing, and hurling the discus event known as the pentathlon inspired world-class competition, and the pancration, a no-holds-barred fight where only biting and eye gouging were prohibited, ensured the toughest men were victorious, and victorious they were. Nobody tops the local baker Coroebus, who in 776 BC became the very first Olympic champion. And we'll never forget Orsippus of Megara, the 720 BC Olympic victor who tore away his loincloth so he could race unimpeded, inaugurating the ancient Greek tradition of competing in the nude. Now there's a winning streak if ever we've seen one. But all good things must end. In 391 AD, the Christian Roman Emperor Theodosius banned pagan practices, so the world soon bid a fond farewell to the Olympic Games.
But just like those early pancration athletes, you can't keep a good one down. And 1,500 years later, in 1896, the modern Olympic Games kicked off in Athens, Greece. Today, the Summer and Winter Olympics bring international world-class athletes together by the thousands, uniting fans by the billions for the world's foremost sporting competition. Citius, Altius, Fortius, 3 cheers for the Olympics.
Okay.
3 cheers for the Olympics.
Well, let me get back up there. There we go. Okay. So, did it talk about some of the similar things that we had read about yesterday? Some of it was kind of silly and a little strange, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that I showed you this video, not because I wanted to make you feel weird, but that became a thing where they would run without clothes on during those ancient times. Could you imagine? Aren't you glad it's different now?
Yes.
Yeah, that would freak me out. Okay, so back in the ancient times, the Olympics were not really like they are nowadays. They said that they would tell poems. Could you imagine Olympic athletes telling poems as part of the Olympic Games? What other things did you catch that were a little different than what we had read about yesterday?
In the Olympic Games, they would sing and play music.
Okay, sing, play music. That's what we read, but thinking about the video.
It didn't really say here, but we talked about it. But in the video, it says they wrestled.
Yes, so this talked about wrestling. We didn't read about that. Yep. A little bit, yep. What else? Right. One of the competitions was to walk like in a full suit of armor. Yeah, the weird one. Okay. All right. So then let's go down on this left side of the, if you open it back up, or if you have it folded, just flip it over. So that you're looking at the mythology part here in blue. Everybody see that? It says Hercules, Rome's greatest hero. Hercules is one of the greatest heroes in Roman mythology. He was the son of the king of the gods, Zeus, and a mortal, which means a human, woman. Hera, the queen of the gods, was very jealous of the new baby. She sent 2 poisonous snakes to kill him in his crib. When his mother went in to wake him up, he was holding a strangled snake in each hand. So we're talking about a new baby holding a snake in this hand that was strangled. Do you know what it means to strangle something?
Yeah.
It means to like choke it so that it dies, right? And he's holding another strangled snake in this hand as a baby.
Newborn baby.
Do you think that that could really happen?
No.
No, that's why it's part of mythology. It's just a story that's been told and told about something or somebody that has superhuman strength. Would that be it? What this newborn baby had was like a super powered strength? Because would a newborn baby really be able to strangle 2 snakes in their crib?
No.
Poisonous nonetheless. At the same time, golly sakes, no. Okay, so when Hercules grew, oh wait, I skipped a line. Even as a baby, he was amazingly strong. When Hercules grew up, Hera was still jealous of him. Her hatred drew Hercules insane, and he accidentally killed his family because he went crazy. That's what insane means, is to go crazy. So he went crazy and did that to his family. Zeus was so angry, he ordered Hercules to do 12 impossible tasks. Did he succeed? Go to mythweb.com/Hercules and then the rest of that address to find out. When Hercules died, Zeus put him in the sky as a constellation to honor him. Have you ever heard of someone looking up at the stars at the different constellations in the sky?
Mhm.
That's what this is referring to. But he is referred to as one of those constellations because they're saying Zeus, after Hercules died, Zeus put him in the sky as a constellation. Could that really happen?
No.
Do people become that star, that group of stars? No. All right. So I don't know if this website will work on your Chromebooks. We'll try it in a little bit. You can try looking on this website to see whether he succeeded at those 12 tasks that Zeus gave him. If it doesn't work on your Chromebooks, we can always pull it up on my laptop and connect it to the board. Okay, Jenny?
I was thinking of going on that other website about, like the one where it was like,
Oh, from the different billboards that it
Yeah,
has,
that's
yep, we can check that out too. Okay, so now let's look, we're still in the center of our newspaper. Let's come up over here to being a good sport. It asks, are you a good sport? Being a good sport means playing by the rules. Now, I watch some of you at recess. Are you always a good sport at recess?
no.
Some of you aren't so much. So it means saying, I'm sorry if you accidentally hurt another player. Good sports do not brag when they win or blame others when they lose. They do not yell or complain if they do not agree with the coach or the referee. It's important to be a good sport when you are on the baseball field or the tennis courts or the school playground. But it's also important to be a good sport wherever you are. Good sports follow the rules at school and at home. They obey the laws of their community. Good sports are the people who make our world a better place to live. Can you even, like in the classroom, be a good sport about things?
Mhm.
Yeah. What about in the lunchroom?
Yep.
PE?
Mhm.
In the library?
Mhm.
On the bus?
Mhm.
No matter where you're at, right, you should be a good sport. Doesn't mean that you have to be an athlete to be a good sport, does it? Being a good sport is making sure that you're following those rules and doing what you need to do. Okay, so we talked about mythology over here. But this week's question in kind of this purplish color says, what is a myth? So how many of you like fairy tales? Or you like folk tales? Okay, people in ancient Rome and Greece did too. They made up stories called myths to try and answer some really big questions like, who are we? And why do things happen the way they do? But myths are stories of excitement and adventure that also try to explain things in nature. So myths have to do with excitement, and adventure, but they explain things in what? In what?
Nature.
I was just making sure you were awake. So, they are usually stories about gods and goddesses, amazing deeds, supernatural powers, and brave heroes. Some myths were created to explain things they didn't understand, like the movement of stars and why the seasons change. Now we have science to help us explain how these things really happen. But hundreds and hundreds of years after the first myth was created, people around the world still enjoy these thrilling stories. Here's what I'm so sorry.
It's up.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your Chromebook out. And I want you to go to Google.
Wake up.
And let's try out this site. You're gonna have to read it carefully. Well, do you want me to email it to you? Would that be easier than you trying to type it in?
Yes.
Okay, I will email it to you, but give me just a second to wake up my computer and do that. Okay, so it says mythweb.com.
I know not right now, but when are we going to come out on mailbox? Oh, what? Look at mine. It only has one slide. Over the weekend, my brother.
Okay. Oh, it's not letting us go to that website, friends. I wondered about that. Oh, no, that's because I typed it wrong. I forgot one letter and it made a huge difference. Okay, so now,
And the only one I have is Miss Jessie.
now I've just emailed it, so you might have to refresh your emails a couple of times before it pops through there.
Maybe just ask when we're gonna empty our. I don't have
Oh.
my clothes. It doesn't matter right now. Oh, is it?
Okay, so it's this email that you just got from me.
Yep.
So go ahead and click on that link. Hopefully it lets you go on your Chromebooks.
Yep, it worked. And then it won't work for me. Yes, it did. Please refresh.
Okay, so what we're finding out was whether Hercules was able to complete those 12 things that his dad Zeus wanted him to complete. Is everybody here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it says when he had come of age and already proved himself an unerring marksman, meaning he never missed when he had his bow and arrow. He always hit his target. With a bow and arrow, a champion wrestler, and the possessor of superhuman strength, Hercules was driven mad by Hera, meaning he went crazy. All right? In a frenzy, he killed his own children. To atone for this crime, do you know what atone means? Probably not. So to get forgiveness for the crime that he had committed, he was sentenced to perform a series of tasks or labors for his cousin Eurystheus, the king of Tiryns and Mycenae. By rights, Hercules should have been king himself, but Hera had tricked her husband Zeus into crowning Eurystheus instead. So, did he complete those tasks? It doesn't really say, does it?
Oh,
She got on the different.
Hey, Miss Little Pig, I know how to do. You gotta tap the arrow.
yeah, you tap the arrow. Not that one.
I have to go back now. Which arrow? This one?
Yeah.
But that's just going, okay, so as his first labor, this is his first challenge. Hercules was challenged to kill the Nemean lion. This was no easy feat, for the beast's parentage was supernatural, and it was more of a monster than an ordinary lion. Now remember, these are myths, so they're like larger than life, right? They have these crazy strengths and powers. Its skin could not be penetrated by spears or arrows, meaning its skin was so thick nothing could go into it. Hercules blocked off the entrances to the lion's cave, crawled into the close confines where it would have to fight face to face, and throttled it to death with his bare hands. Think that's true?
No.
Do you see why these are myths?
Yeah.
Ever afterwards, he wore the lion's skin as a cloak and its gaping jaws as a helmet. Do you see how he has it kind of over him? Like he would wear it like a coat and kind of like a hood. Okay. There we go. All right, the second one. Now, before we keep reading on, do you think he's gonna get through all 12 of these? How many of you think he'll get through all 12 of these things that he has to do? Okay. So this one was about King Eurystheus, who was so afraid of his cousin. His cousin was Hercules. He was afraid of him. I'm just paraphrasing this. Is that okay? So he was so afraid of his cousin, and he saw his cousin coming toward him with this lion over him, with like the lion's mouth as the hood on top of his head. And he hid in a storage jar, because back then they had like big, huge jars, these pottery jars. And so he hid inside one, which is what they're showing here. And from this shelter where he was inside that jar, he ordered the next labor, the next thing that Hercules had to do. And what he had to do was go find this multi-headed monster called Hydra. And what do you think he had to do to it?
Kill it.
He had to kill it. All right. So they said that this monster, Hydra, that had many different heads, lived in the swamps of Lerna. But they could never really figure out how many heads it had. Some said that it had 8, some said 9, while others said that it had as many as 10,000 heads. You think?
No.
All right. But they all agreed that as soon as they had one head from that monster that was chopped off, 2 or more would grow in its place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
You think that could
No.
happen?
No.
All right, let's keep seeing what else. All right, so this is still part of that same thing. So they said not only did this multi-headed monster, or did this monster have all these heads, it also had lethal, do you know what lethal means?
No.
Deadly breath. So if it breathed on things, what would it do?
Kill it.
It would kill it. All right. So even smelling, right here it says, even smelling its footprints was enough to kill an ordinary mortal, which is a human being. It says, fortunately, Hercules was no ordinary mortal. What do you think Hercules did?
Kill it. Strangle it.
You think he strangled it? You think he killed it? How do you think he might have killed it?
That was me.
Oh, it was you. I thought it was you. Sorry. How do you think he might have killed it?
I don't know.
You don't know? No guess? Alright, let's find out. So he goes out and is looking for this multi-headed monster with flaming arrows. What does that mean? His arrows are on
Fire.
fire. And it says, but now the fight went in Hydra's favor. It twined its many heads around the hero and tried to trip him. It called on an ally, a huge crab that lived in that swamp as well, and that crab bit Hercules. Hercules was on the verge of failure when he remembered his nephew, Iolaus, the son of his twin brother, however you say his name, his twin brother Ai. So he's called his nephew to help him. Do you think he's going to be able to beat the crab and Hydra?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Let's find out.
I don't know.
Okay, this just gets crazier. This is why this is mythology. So Iolaus, who had driven Hercules to Lerna in a chariot, looked on. He's totally freaked out. He's nervous. And he's watching his uncle becoming, entangled in Hydra's snaky heads. And so he's watching this. We're talking about mythology. He's watching this, and he couldn't handle it anymore. So he hears his uncle hollering and crying out for help. So now he grabbed a burning torch and he dashed into the fight. So now fighting this monster is Hercules and his nephew. Do you think they're gonna win?
Yes.
Yes.
You think so?
Maybe.
Maybe? Alright, so what would happen is Hercules, because he's got this superhuman strength, right? He was cutting off the heads. But what did we hear earlier would happen when one of those were cut off? What would happen? More would grow in its place. So they had to figure out a way to keep more from growing in its place. What they would do, remember he ran into the fight with that, like a burning torch? And he would burn the top where they had cut off those heads. So then that would keep the other heads from sprouting through. Do you think they're gonna win?
Yes.
Yes.
They did. Alright, and they buried him under a deep, deep rock. Okay, we're not gonna read through all 12 because that would take a really long time. But let's go on. It's about all these crazy things that Hercules had to do to prove that he should live. If you want to, you can come back to that sometime and read through those, even though it's kind of difficult to read. Okay, so,
Actually, on your keyboard, if you just take your 2 fingers and spread it out, it zooms in.
does it? Okay, well, yours is different than mine. So, alright, so, he did in fact make it through all 12 of those, which is no surprise since we are talking about Greek mythology. But you have that email with the link in it. You can read through. It just gives you ideas of the different things that he was required to do in order to live, basically, because he had gone crazy. All right, so let's do this. Put your newspaper back in a folder, and while I'll do that tomorrow. Go ahead and put that away, and we will continue on with that tomorrow.